She didn't look like what most people expected a Marine to look like. That was the first thing they noticed. Not because she was weak. She wasn't, but because she was young. Too young, some of them thought. Her face still carried softness, the kind that made people assume things they hadn't earned the right to assume. Private First Class Emily Carter stood at attention in the dusty courtyard of Forward Operating Base Kestrel, boots planted firmly, chin level, eyes forward. She didn't blink. The desert heat pressed down like a hand on the back of her neck, sweat crawling beneath her flak vest, but she stayed still. Marines around her shifted their weight, rolled their shoulders, adjusted straps. She didn't. Sergeant Daniel Reyes walked the line slowly, boots crunching on gravel. He stopped in front of her. "You knew?" he asked. "Yes, Sergeant," Emily replied. His eyes moved over her. Gear, posture, stance. He wasn't checking her body. He was checking her discipline. "Where you from?" "Ohio, Sergeant." Reyes grunted. "Figures." Emily didn't ask what that meant. Reyes stepped away, voice rising. "Listen up. We're short one rifleman after yesterday's medevac. Command sent us a replacement." He gestured with his chin. "Her." A few heads turned. Not hostile. Not friendly. Curious. Corporal Mason Hale leaned toward another Marine and muttered, "Great." Emily heard it. She pretended she didn't. Reyes continued. "She's assigned to 3rd Squad." "Hale, she's yours." Hale didn't smile. "Yes, Sergeant." 3rd Squad didn't welcome her. They didn't insult her either. They did something worse. They ignored her. Emily followed them through the base, memorizing names, voices, rhythms. Marines talked over her, around her, never to her. When she asked where to store her gear, no one answered until Reyes barked at them to respond. That night, she lay on her bunk staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant thump of artillery somewhere beyond the wire. She wasn't afraid. She was aware. There was a difference. Her first patrol came 2 days later. The mission was routine, movement through a cluster of abandoned buildings near a dried riverbed. Intelligence suggested insurgent activity. Nothing confirmed. That alone made it dangerous. Emily checked her weapon twice. Then a third time. Hale noticed. "You nervous?" he asked. "No, Corporal." He smirked. "Good. Don't be. It'll get you killed." Emily met his eyes. "I know." That surprised him. They rolled out at dawn, heat already climbing, dust sticking to skin like a second layer. Emily took point when ordered, scanning rooftops, windows, broken doorways. Her breathing slowed. Her world narrowed. She noticed things. A shoe print too fresh for an abandoned building. A curtain moving when there was no wind. A piece of trash placed deliberately to mark a corner. She didn't speak immediately. She waited. Then she raised her fist. The squad froze. Hale turned, irritation flashing across his face. "What?" Emily crouched, pointing subtly. "That building. 2nd floor. Window on the left." Hale squinted. "What about it?" "The shadow," she said quietly. "It moved against the light." Hale hesitated. Then Reyes came up behind them. "What view you got?" Emily repeated herself. Reyes studied the building, then nodded once. "Good catch." He signaled the squad to shift. Seconds later, a shot cracked from that exact window. It missed. Barely. Marines returned fire, precise and overwhelming. The threat was neutralized quickly. One insurgent, poorly trained, unlucky. When it was over, Hale looked at Emily differently. Not impressed. Not yet. But no longer dismissive. That night, Hale tossed her a bottle of water. "Good eyes," he said. Emily caught it. "Thank you, Corporal." He shrugged. "Doesn't mean anything." She nodded. "I know." But it did. 3 weeks later, everything changed. They were assigned to Operation Black Tide, a push into a coastal city fractured by fighting, where insurgent forces had embedded themselves among civilians and turned narrow streets into killing corridors. Urban combat. The worst kind. Reyes briefed them inside a concrete structure riddled with old bullet holes. "This won't be clean," he said. "We move block by block." Expect resistance. Expect traps. Emily felt the tension settle into her muscles like armor. She was ready. What she wasn't ready for was the look Hale gave her before they stepped off. You stay close, he said. Don't play hero. Emily didn't argue. She didn't need to. The ambush came without warning. An explosion tore through the street behind them, flipping a vehicle onto its side, fire licking skyward. Gunfire erupted from windows, rooftops, alleyways. Chaos. Reyes went down, shrapnel tearing into his leg. Sergeant's hit, someone yelled. Hale dragged Reyes behind cover, returning fire one-handed. Emily dropped beside them, heart pounding, but mind clear. She scanned. She saw the pattern. They're funneling us, she said. They want us pinned here. Hale glanced at her. Suggestions? She swallowed once. There's a service alley behind that market, she said. If we move now, we can flank them. Hale hesitated. Then he nodded. Do it. Emily led. They moved fast, precise, slipping through shadows and debris. Emily took point again, counting steps, watching angles. When they hit the flank, the enemy wasn't ready. The fight ended as quickly as it had begun. When silence returned, Hale stared at her. You ever done this before? He asked. Emily shook her head. No. He frowned. Could have fooled me. Later, as Medevac lifted Reyes away, Hale sat beside Emily on the curb, helmet off, sweat streaking his face. You saved us, he said. Emily looked at the smoke rising over the city. No, she said. We saved each other. Hale nodded slowly. That was the first time he called her Marine. Urban combat doesn't feel like combat at first. It feels like a mistake you keep walking deeper into. The streets look ordinary, laundry lines, broken shop signs, balconies with chipped paint. Then the air shifts. The noise changes. And you realize the city has learned how to bite. Operation Black Tide turned into a grind within 48 hours. Not the kind you see in movies, where squads sprint through explosions and win the block by the end of the scene. This was slower, dirtier. The city fought back in inches, and every inch had a price tag written in blood and exhaustion. Reyes was gone, medevaced, out of the fight. Command sent a replacement squad leader who didn't know them, didn't know the streets, didn't know the rhythms of 3rd Squad. Staff Sergeant Keller arrived with a clipboard mentality and a voice that still believed plans survived contact. We clear Sector 9 by nightfall, he said on day 3, pointing at a map taped to a concrete wall. Hale stared at the map like it was insulting him. That's 3 blocks of tight alleys and elevated positions. Keller didn't flinch. Then we move fast. Emily said nothing. She studied the map and listened to the way Keller talked. Too confident. Too clean. Not stupid. Just inexperienced in this kind of place. A city like this punished that. They stepped off at dawn. The sun was a dull white disk behind haze and smoke. Everything smelled of ash. Distant gunfire echoed in irregular pulses, like a heartbeat with arrhythmia. 3rd Squad moved in a file along the right wall of a street lined with burned cars. Emily took 2nd position behind point, scanning windows, checking rooftops, watching shadows. Hale walked near her now, not out of affection, but because he had started to trust her eyes. The first trap was obvious. A wire stretched low across the street, tied to a piece of debris that looked like it had been placed, not fallen. Emily saw it, raised her fist, froze the squad. Keller sighed loudly. We've got an EOD team for that. Mark it. Move. Emily's jaw tightened. Marking it meant leaving it for the next unit that didn't see it. But she didn't argue. Yet, the second trap wasn't obvious. It was a smell. A faint chemical sharpness seeping from a doorway as they passed. Emily's body reacted before her mind did, skin tightening, breath catching. She stopped dead. Hale noticed instantly. What? Emily pointed at the doorway. That's not normal. Keller glanced at it, annoyed. It's a city. Nothing's normal. Emily's voice stayed calm. It's fuel? Or solvent? Something volatile. Keller waved a hand. We don't have time. He stepped forward. Emily grabbed his vest, and yanked him back hard. Keller stumbled, shocked, about to explode in anger. And the doorway ignited. A hidden device detonated inside the building, blowing fire and debris outward. The pressure wave punched the air, heat rolling across them like a physical wall. If Keller had taken one more step, he would have been vapor and bone. Silence hit the squad. Keller stared at Emily, eyes wide now, stripped of pride. "How did you?" "I smelled it," Emily said simply. Hale exhaled once, slow. "Told you the city bites." Keller didn't respond. He didn't need to. The city had made the point. They cleared Sector 9 by nightfall. Not because Keller's plan was good, because Emily kept finding the teeth before they sank in. She watched the way enemies used mirror reflections to spot movement. She noticed when dust on a windowsill had been disturbed, someone had been there recently. She noticed the rhythm of street noise changing when a sniper shifted position. By sunset, Keller had stopped giving confident orders and started asking questions. He didn't ask Hale. He asked Emily, "What do you see?" Emily hated the feeling at first, because seeing meant responsibility. But she answered, "They moved. They survived." That was the only metric that mattered. On day 5, they lost a man. Not Hale. Not Keller. Not Emily. Lance Corporal Brooks, a quiet kid who carried extra ammo and never complained, took a round through the throat when he leaned out to check a corner the wrong way. He dropped instantly, hands reaching for a wound that couldn't be controlled. Emily was there in seconds, hands already moving, but her fingers met reality. Blood too fast, airway gone. Brooks's eyes looked at her, not pleading, not afraid, just surprised. Like he'd believed he was invincible until the city corrected him. Emily pressed pressure anyway, because medics and Marines fought truth the same way, stubbornly. Brooks died in less than a minute. When it was over, Keller stared at the body, mouth slightly open. Hale's face turned to stone. Emily's hands were red, and she couldn't feel her fingers anymore. Not from cold, from shock. They carried Brooks to a temporary casualty collection point and covered him with a tarp. Someone murmured a prayer. No one cried. Not because they didn't care, because crying required time, and the city didn't give time for free. That night, Emily sat alone on a stairwell landing, helmet in her lap. She stared at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Hale approached quietly and sat beside her without speaking for a long moment. Then he said, "First one." Emily didn't look up. "No." Hale nodded. "But this one hit." Emily swallowed. "Because it was stupid. It was avoidable." Hale's voice dropped. "Most of them are." Emily closed her eyes. She felt something shift inside her, not breaking, but hardening. A new layer of armor being built out of grief. She opened her eyes again. "What do we do?" she asked. Hale looked out through a broken window at the city lights flickering like dying stars. "We finish," he said. Emily nodded. On day 6, Keller made a call that should have gotten them killed. They were tasked with clearing a school building that insurgents had been using as a command node. It sat at the end of a wide avenue, open ground, minimal cover. A perfect place for a sniper to harvest Marines. Emily studied the approach and felt her stomach tighten. "No," she said quietly. Keller glanced at her. "No. This avenue is a funnel," Emily said. "If we go straight in, we'll get pinned. We need to come from behind." Keller frowned. "Behind is a residential block. Too many unknowns." Emily's eyes stayed calm. "Unknowns are better than certainty." Keller's jaw tightened. He was still fighting pride, still wanting to prove he was worthy of being their squad leader. "We're going straight," he decided. Hale's face darkened. "Staff Sergeant." Keller cut him off. "That's an order." Emily felt the moment in her chest, like a door opening. The decision point. Follow the order and walk into death, or speak again and risk being labeled insubordinate. Emily stood very still. Then she said, "If we go straight, we lose people." The words weren't emotional. They weren't disrespectful. They were a fact. Keller stared at her. Hale stared at Keller like he was daring him to keep the order. The silence stretched. Then Keller exhaled hard. Fine, he said. Show me. Emily pointed to the map. Service alleys. Courtyard cut through. We hit the back wall and breach. Keller nodded slowly. Do it. Hale's mouth twitched in something like approval. They moved through the residential block instead. Tight. Unpredictable. Dangerous. But Emily's senses were sharp. She spotted a lookout before he could signal. Hale dropped him silently. They reached the school's rear wall without taking fire. When they breached and cleared the building, they found exactly what Emily expected. A sniper hide overlooking the avenue. A scoped rifle on a tripod. A firing slit cut into the classroom wall. A kill nest waiting for them. Hale stared at it, then looked at Emily. You just saved us again, he said quietly. Emily didn't smile. She looked at the rifle, then the empty desk beside it, and thought about Brooks. That night, Keller found Emily alone near the building's rooftop edge, watching the city. He looked older than he had a week ago. I owe you, he said. Emily didn't turn. You owe Brooks. Keller swallowed. I know. He hesitated. I didn't want to look weak. Emily finally looked at him. Weak is ignoring reality. Strong is changing your mind. Keller nodded slowly. Then he said the words that mattered more than any apology. From now on, you're my second voice, he said. If you see something, you speak. No matter what. Emily held his gaze. Copy, she said. The counterattack didn't announce itself. It never did. It started with absence. No gunfire. No movement. No distant shouting. The city went quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like a held breath before a scream. Emily felt it before anyone said a word. She stood near a blown-out window on the third floor of a half-collapsed apartment building, scanning the street below through her optic. The avenue that had been active an hour earlier now looked abandoned. No civilians. No insurgent runners. Even the stray cats had vanished. Her pulse slowed. This was the moment cities used to lie. Hale, she said quietly over the intra-squad net. Something's wrong. Hale answered immediately. Yeah, I feel it too. Keller's voice cut in. What are you seeing? Nothing, Emily replied. And that's the problem. Keller didn't argue this time. Hold positions. Nobody moves without eyes on. They waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then the ground shook. The explosion came from beneath them. Deep, concussive, ripping through the building's lower floors like the city itself had reached up to grab them. The floor dropped. Not collapsed completely, failed. Emily felt weightlessness for half a heartbeat, then slammed hard against concrete as the room tilted violently. Dust swallowed the air. The world turned into noise and pressure and darkness. Contact! Someone shouted, cut off midword. Emily rolled, coughing, pulling her rifle tight to her chest by instinct. Her ears rang, vision blurred. She tasted blood. She forced herself to breathe. Around her, Marines were shouting, swearing, checking each other. Report. Hale barked. Sound off. I'm up. Hit, but moving. Can't feel my leg. Wait. Okay. Keller didn't answer. Emily's stomach tightened. She crawled toward the stairwell that no longer existed, concrete and rebar twisted like exposed bones. She found Keller near what used to be a doorway, half buried under debris, helmet cracked, eyes unfocused. Keller, she yelled. No response. She checked his pulse. It was there. Weak. He's out, Emily said into the net. Squad leader down. A beat of silence. Then Hale's voice, steady but heavy. You're in charge. Emily froze. Just for a second. Then the city answered the hesitation. Gunfire erupted from surrounding buildings. Automatic fire ripping into the rubble-strewn interior. The explosion had been bait. A breach without entry. The enemy was trying to finish them while they were stunned. Take cover. Emily shouted. Windows and doorways. Don't silhouette. Marines moved on instinct, dragging wounded, returning fire through dust and smoke. The building groaned around them, cracked supports screaming under stress. Emily felt the weight settle. This wasn't about rank. This was about responsibility. She keyed her mic. Third squad, listen up. We're boxed. They think we're pinned and bleeding. We're going to change that. Hale fired short bursts to keep heads down. Suggestions? Emily's eyes moved fast. Angles, exits, weaknesses. They expect us to hold, she said. We won't. She pointed. There. That wall's already compromised. We blow it. Create an exit they're not watching. Hale nodded. Breacher, get ready. The breacher moved, hands shaking but determined. Emily knelt beside him, voice calm. Count to 3, she said. Then we go. The charge detonated, ripping open the wall in a cloud of dust and shattered brick. Sunlight and gunfire poured in. Move, Emily shouted. They didn't hesitate. They flowed through the breach like water, fast and violent, spilling into an alley the enemy hadn't covered properly. Surprise bought them seconds. Seconds saved lives. They pushed hard, firing and moving, breaking contact before the enemy could reset. Behind them, the building they'd been trapped in finally gave up entirely, collapsing inward with a roar. If they'd stayed another minute, they would have been buried alive. They regrouped 2 blocks away, breathing hard, ammo low, wounded stabilized as best they could. Hale looked at Emily, eyes wide with something like disbelief. You just pulled us out of a grave, he said. Emily shook her head. We pulled ourselves out. Hale didn't argue. They carried Keller with them. Improvised litter. Slow movement. Constant security. The city didn't let them forget they were still inside it. Shots echoed occasionally. Shadows shifted. Every corner threatened another lesson. By nightfall, they reached a defensible structure. Thick walls, limited entry points. They secured it methodically, setting overwatch, reinforcing positions. Inside, the squad finally stopped moving. And the weight hit. One Marine sat against the wall and started laughing, sharp, broken. Another stared at nothing, hands still gripping his rifle. Emily leaned against a column, knees suddenly weak now that adrenaline had nowhere to go. Hale sat beside her. You okay? He asked quietly. Emily nodded once. Later, he understood. They sat in silence for a while. Then Hale spoke again. You know they're going to talk about today. Emily didn't look at him. They shouldn't. They will, Hale said. Because you didn't freeze. Emily closed her eyes briefly. Freezing is a luxury. Hale nodded. You're a Marine. She opened her eyes and met his gaze. I always was. Just before midnight, Keller stirred. Emily was there instantly, kneeling beside him. Easy, she said. You're safe. Keller blinked, confused, then focused. Carter, he croaked. Yes, Staff Sergeant. He swallowed with effort. Did we? We got out, Emily said. Everyone who could walk is alive. Keller exhaled slowly, relief flickering across his face. He looked at her, truly looked this time. You led them, he said. Emily didn't deny it. Someone had to. Keller's hand twitched, finding hers briefly. You did good, he whispered. Better than good. His eyes closed again. Emily stayed there until his breathing evened out. Later that night, as the city pulsed with distant violence, Emily climbed to the roof alone. The sky was starless, smoke and haze swallowing everything beyond a few faint points of light. Somewhere out there, enemies planned their next move. She felt the weight of command pressing down on her chest. She also felt something else. Resolve. She hadn't asked for this, but she wasn't going to run from it. Because cities chewed men up. But tonight, they had underestimated a Marine. Orders came through at 0317. They always did at the worst hour, when the body was exhausted, when the mind was most vulnerable to doubt. Emily was cleaning her rifle when Keller's radio crackled to life. The voice on the other end was distant, clipped, untouched by smoke or dust. Third Squad, be advised. Higher is redirecting assets. You are to hold your current position until relief arrives. Emily felt it immediately, a tightening behind the eyes. Hale looked up. Hold. That's it. Keller stirred on the litter, consciousness coming and going. Emily moved to the radio. Request clarification, she said. A pause. Hold position, the voice repeated. No maneuver. Emily closed her eyes for half a second. The city outside had changed again. She could feel it. The silence was wrong, too organized. Not fear. Coordination. She motioned Hale closer. "They're pulling resources," she said quietly. "Which means we're no longer the priority." Hale's jaw clenched. "We're bait." "Yes." He didn't argue. That was new. Emily turned back to the radio. "What's the ETA on relief?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Unknown." That was the word that decided everything. Emily clicked the radio off. Hale stared at her. "You just—" "I know," she said. "But listen." She moved to the roof edge, scanning through optics. Heat signatures flickered in the distance. Too many, too deliberate. Enemy fighters moving in arcs, not lines. Encirclement. "They're not rushing us," she said. "They're sealing us." Hale swallowed. "If we stay, we get buried," Emily finished. Below them, the building groaned again, settling under its own damage. It wouldn't survive another sustained fight. Emily turned to the squad. "All right," she said. "We're not holding." No one spoke. Not because they were afraid. Because they were waiting. "We're moving before they finish closing the ring," Emily continued. "We go through the old sewer access on the east side. It's narrow, flooded in places, and it smells like death." She met their eyes one by one. "That's why they won't expect it." A Marine raised a hand. "What about the order?" Emily didn't flinch. "I'll answer for it," she said. Silence. Then Hale nodded. "You heard her." The squad moved. The sewer entrance was exactly as bad as Emily had promised. A rusted grate half hidden beneath rubble, the stench rising like a physical wall. Black water pooled beneath it, thick with debris. Marines hesitated only long enough to adjust straps and secure weapons. Then they went in. The tunnel swallowed sound. Boots splashed softly. Water lapped against concrete walls. The darkness pressed close, heavy and intimate. Emily led, light low, senses stretched tight. Every step felt wrong. That was good. They moved for 20 minutes like that. Slow, careful, breathing shallow. Keller groaned once, but didn't wake. Then the tunnel sloped upward. Emily raised her fist. The squad froze. She listened. Above them, movement. Footsteps. Voices. The enemy had found the sewer too late, but they were searching now. Emily leaned close to Hale. "We wait." Hale nodded. Minutes passed. Then someone above shouted. The footsteps moved away. Emily exhaled. "Now," she whispered. They moved fast, emerging into a narrow service corridor behind a market block already scarred by fighting. Dawn crept into the sky, turning smoke a dull orange. They slipped away just as gunfire erupted behind them. Enemy fighters discovering the empty building they'd abandoned. Emily didn't look back. The regroup point was 3 blocks south, a reinforced compound previously cleared and marked as defensible. They reached it with minimal contact. When the last Marine crossed the threshold, Hale locked the door and leaned against it, chest heaving. "We're alive," he said. Emily nodded, exhaustion finally breaking through the armor. They stabilized Keller again, set perimeter, redistributed ammo. Only then did Emily allow herself to sit. Her hands shook now. She let them. The call came an hour later. "Third squad. Report," the voice demanded. Angrier now. Sharper. Emily keyed the mic. "We repositioned," she said. "Avoided encirclement. All personnel accounted for." The silence on the other end stretched long enough to feel like punishment. "You disobeyed a direct order," the voice said. "Yes," Emily replied. Another pause. "Explain." Emily looked around at her squad, dirty, wounded, alive. "If we had held," she said calmly, "we would be dead." The enemy had already sealed 3 approach routes and was positioning heavy weapons. "You were told to hold." "I chose to survive," Emily said. Hale held his breath. The radio crackled softly. Then the voice returned, quieter now. "Stand by." The channel went dead. No one spoke. Minutes passed. Then Keller stirred again, eyes clearer this time. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked weakly. Emily met his gaze. "Yes, Staff Sergeant." Keller nodded slowly. Good. That was all. Relief arrived at noon. Armored vehicles pushed through the streets, guns scanning, presence undeniable. The enemy melted away, unwilling to contest fresh force. As Marines rotated in, medics took over care of the wounded. Keller was loaded for evac, conscious and stable. Before they moved him, he caught Emily's sleeve. They'll write this up, he said. There'll be questions. Emily nodded. I know. Keller's eyes hardened with something like pride. I'll answer them. Emily didn't thank him. She didn't need to. Later, as the squad prepared to stand down, Hale sat beside her again. You ever think about what happens after? He asked. Emily looked out at the city, still dangerous, still broken, but quieter now. Sometimes, she said. What do you see? She considered the question. I see Marines walking away, she said. I see families that don't get phone calls. I see people who don't know how close they were to not making it. Hale nodded. You see more than most. Emily met his eyes. So do you. You just choose not to look all the time. He smiled faintly. Maybe. They sat in silence, watching dust drift through sunlight. The city had tried to take them. It had failed, but it had marked them all the same. Emily felt it settle inside her, not guilt, not pride. Responsibility. She stood and adjusted her gear. Let's get ready, she said. For what? Hale asked. Emily looked back at the city. For whatever comes next. The last fight didn't come with an explosion. It came with paperwork. That was the cruel irony Emily would remember years later. Not the sound of gunfire, not the smell of smoke, but the sterile hum of a generator and the scratch of a pen across a form. They held the compound for another 6 hours. No enemy assault came. No desperate final charge. The insurgents melted back into the city, satisfied that the Americans had paid enough attention to one pocket while pressure shifted elsewhere. That, too, was war. Hale stood watch from the roof, scanning the streets through optics that now showed only empty movement, stray dogs, drifting smoke, a curtain flapping in a window. They're gone, he said quietly. Emily nodded. For now. Below them, Marines packed gear, checked weapons, cleaned blood from armor where they could. Medics moved between the wounded, voices calm, hands steady. Keller was gone, lifted out by medevac less than an hour earlier. The last thing he'd done before loading was look at Emily and say, You did exactly what a Marine is supposed to do. That mattered more than any citation. The debrief began that evening. Emily stood in a prefabricated command tent under harsh white lights, flanked by Hale and 2 officers she'd never met. Their uniforms were clean. Their boots had never touched the streets she'd just survived. Private First Class Carter, one of them said, flipping through a folder. You disobeyed a direct order. Yes, sir, Emily replied. The officer leaned back. Do you understand the seriousness of that? Emily met his gaze without defiance. Yes, sir. Another officer spoke. You were ordered to hold position. Yes, sir. And instead you maneuvered your squad without authorization. Yes, sir. Silence stretched. Then the first officer asked the only question that mattered. Why? Emily didn't rush the answer. Because the enemy had completed an encirclement, she said calmly. Because our position was structurally compromised. Because holding would have resulted in catastrophic casualties. She paused. And because my responsibility was to my Marines. The officers exchanged glances. Hale shifted his weight but stayed silent. One of them finally spoke. Your after-action report supports this assessment. Emily nodded. Yes, sir. Another pause. Then the officer closed the folder. You'll receive a formal reprimand, he said, for disobeying orders. Emily accepted it without expression. But, he continued, no disciplinary action will follow. Hale exhaled quietly. The officer looked directly at Emily. Because every Marine under your leadership walked out alive. Emily nodded once. Thank you, sir. That was the end of it. No applause. No speeches. No headlines. Just Marines being released back into the dust. They rotated out 3 days later. As the convoy rolled away from the city, Emily sat with her helmet between her boots, watching buildings slide past, scarred, broken, still standing. Hale nudged her shoulder. "You know," he said, "when you showed up, I thought command was crazy." Emily smirked faintly. "You weren't alone." Hale shook his head. "I was wrong." Emily didn't respond immediately. Then she said, "You changed your mind." Hale smiled. "Yeah, that too." The convoy crossed the outer perimeter, and the city disappeared behind them. No dramatic music, just distance. Weeks later, back at base, Third Squad gathered at dusk near the motor pool. Reyes was there, on crutches, smiling like hell despite it all. "I hear I missed a show," he said. Hale laughed. "You did." Reyes looked at Emily. "You lead them?" Emily nodded. "Temporarily." Reyes studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "That's how it starts." Emily raised an eyebrow. "What is?" "Command," Reyes replied. She didn't answer, but she felt the weight of it settle, quiet, heavy, unavoidable. On her last night before reassignment, Emily stood alone near the wire, desert wind brushing against her uniform. Stars stretched overhead, sharp and distant. She thought about Brooks, about Keller, about the city that tried to kill them. She thought about how fear had felt, not paralyzing, not overwhelming, but informative, like a signal you learn to read. Footsteps approached. Hale stopped beside her. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "The order?" Emily considered. "No," she said. "I'd regret the bodies." Hale nodded. "Fair." They stood in silence for a while. Then Hale said, "You know what they'll say about you?" Emily glanced at him. "What?" "That you're dangerous," he replied. "Not because you're reckless, because you think." Emily smiled faintly. "Good," she said. Years later, Marines would talk about that rotation. They wouldn't mention dates. They wouldn't mention locations. They'd say, "We had a young Marine with us. She saw things early. She made the call. And we walked out. No rank. No medals. Just respect." Because in the Marine Corps, stories don't survive on paper. They survive in who comes home. And that night, they all did. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Epic Recon Stories. Here we tell the missions that never made the headlines, the decisions made in silence, and the people who carried them. More stories are coming soon.